The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. Chapter 1. The Cyclone. Dorothy lived in the middle of the countryside in Kansas with Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, who were farmers. The three of them lived in a small house which had only one very simple room. There were 4 chairs in it, and a table, and 2 beds. The interesting thing about the room was that in the middle of the floor it had a small door. If you opened it, you could go down a ladder into a deep hole in the ground which was called a cyclone cellar. The family could go there in case a cyclone came and crushed their house. When Dorothy stood in the doorway of the little house and looked around, she could see nothing but gray prairie on every side. There were no houses or trees anywhere, only the gray grass burnt by the sun. The strong prairie sun and wind had taken all the color from Uncle Henry and Aunt Em's cheeks and eyes, and left them gray too. Only Toto was not gray. He was a little black dog, with small black eyes which smiled at Dorothy from his tiny face. Toto and Dorothy were best friends, and they usually played together all day. But today they were not playing. They were watching Uncle Henry, who was sitting on the doorstep and watching the sky, which was even grayer than usual. His face looked sad, and when he heard the loud crying sound of the wind from the north, he stood up and said, "That's a cyclone. You two go down into the cellar, and I'll look after the animals." The same moment, Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Dorothy ran towards him, while Aunt Em threw the small trap door open and climbed quickly down the ladder into the cellar. When Dorothy finally caught Toto and started to follow her aunt, a very strange thing happened. The strong wind shook the house so much that Dorothy fell over onto the floor. Then the house started to move around, and then began to go up slowly through the air like a balloon. The north and south winds met where the house stood, and so made it the exact center of the cyclone. In the middle of the cyclone, the air was still, but the great pressure of the wind was raising the little house higher and higher until it went up to the very top of the cyclone and was carried miles and miles away as easily as you could carry a feather. It was dark inside the house, and the sound of the wind outside was terrible, but Dorothy felt strangely safe riding through the air. Toto didn't like it, though, and the little girl had to hold him in her arms. After several hours, they were both so tired that despite the terrible noise, they fell asleep on the floor. They were awoken by a great shock as the house finally landed. Dorothy sat up and noticed that the house was not moving anymore. It was not dark either. She jumped up onto her feet and ran to the door, opened it, and as she looked around, her eyes started to grow bigger and bigger. It turned out that the cyclone had set the house very gently, for a cyclone, in the middle of a beautiful country. The grass all around was green and with colorful flowers in it. Pretty birds were singing beautifully among the trees and bushes. And then Dorothy saw a group of people coming towards her from among the trees. 3 of them were men, dressed from head to toe in blue, and one was a woman and was wearing a white dress with little silver stars on it. When they noticed that Dorothy was looking at them, the 3 men stopped, as if frightened. But the little woman came up to Dorothy and said in a sweet voice, "You are welcome, great sorceress, to the land of the Munchkins. We are very grateful to you for killing the Wicked Witch of the East and for making the Munchkins free people." Dorothy could not believe her own ears. What could it all mean? "You are very kind, but there must be some mistake," she said. "I am not a sorceress, and I have not killed anything in my life." "Your house did anyway. See," said the little woman, laughing and pointing to one of the corners of the house. Dorothy looked over and saw 2 thin feet in silver shoes sticking out from under the house. Oh dear, cried Dorothy. "The house must have fallen on her. But who was she?" asked Dorothy. "She was the Wicked Witch of the East, as I said," answered the little woman. "She was terrible and wicked indeed. She ruled over this beautiful land, making the Munchkins her slaves day and night. Now they are free and very grateful to you." "I see," said Dorothy, thinking that it was all very strange indeed. "But I am not a Munchkin," added the woman. I am the Good Witch of the North." "Really?" Dorothy's eyes grew bigger. "I thought all witches were wicked." "Oh no, that is a great mistake. There were only 4 witches in the land of Oz, and 2 of them, those who live in the north and the south, are good witches. There were 2 wicked witches who lived in the east and the west, but now that you have killed one of them, there's only 1 wicked witch in the land of Oz." The Wicked Witch of the North stopped at this point and looked at the corner of the house to which 3 of the Munchkins were now pointing. The feet of the dead witch had disappeared, and all that was left of her now were the 2 silver shoes. The Witch of the North picked them up and handed them to Dorothy. "They are yours now. The Wicked Witch was very proud of them because they have some magic power, but I never knew what it was." "Thank you," said Dorothy, taking the shoes. "But now I would really like to go back home to Kansas. Otherwise, I'm sure my Aunt Em will be very worried. Could you help me find my way?" "Kansas?" said the witch thoughtfully. "I'm sure I don't know where that is. All I know is that the land of Oz is surrounded by a desert which nobody can cross. I'm afraid, my dear, you will have to stay with us." When Dorothy heard this, tears came to her eyes and she started to cry. The Munchkins felt so sorry for her that they immediately took out blue handkerchiefs from the pockets of their blue trousers and began to cry too. Only the Witch of the North didn't cry. Instead, she slowly took off her white hat, then looked inside and read, "Let Dorothy go to the City of Emeralds." "If your name is Dorothy, my dear," said the witch, looking carefully at Dorothy, "then you must go to the Emerald City. Perhaps Oz will help you." "And where is this city?" answered Dorothy, drying her eyes. "It's exactly in the middle of the country, and it is ruled by Oz, the Great Wizard." "How can I get there?" asked the little girl, who was slowly getting used to finding out about new witches and wizards. "You must walk. The road to the Emerald City is made of yellow brick. You cannot miss it. And I'll give you my kiss, which will keep you safe. No one will dare hurt a person who has been kissed by the Witch of the North." She came close to Dorothy and kissed the girl's forehead, which left a round, shiny mark on it. "Good luck, my dear," the witch said and disappeared. Chapter 2. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman. Dorothy decided to lose no time and set off for the Emerald City as soon as possible. But then she looked down at her feet and saw how old and worn her shoes were. Fortunately, she remembered the pretty silver shoes that the Witch of the North had given her. She tried them on and found that they fitted her perfectly. Satisfied, she stood up and said, "Come now, Toto, we're going to see the Great Oz, and he'll send us home to Kansas." They found the road made of yellow brick very quickly, and soon were walking happily towards the Emerald City. They looked around as they walked, and saw that the country of the Munchkins was very beautiful. There were green fields everywhere, with little blue houses and pretty blue fences. Munchkins seemed to be very good farmers, and blue was clearly their favorite color. They had walked several miles when Dorothy thought they should stop to rest. She climbed to the top of a blue fence beside the road and sat down. There was a great cornfield on either side of the fence, and not far away she saw a scarecrow placed on a high pole to keep the birds away from the corn. Dorothy thought it was the best scarecrow she had ever seen. It had a head made of a small bag stuffed with straw, with eyes, ears, a mouth, and a nose beautifully painted on it. On its head it had a blue hat, and the rest of the figure had been made out of a blue shirt and trousers, also stuffed with straw. Suddenly, to Dorothy's great surprise, one of the painted eyes in the scarecrow's face moved around, and then the scarecrow said, "Good day, how do you do?" "Very well, thank you," answered Dorothy politely, thinking at the same time that she had never seen a talking scarecrow before. "How do you do?" "I'm not very well," said the scarecrow with a smile. "I wish I didn't have to stay all day on this pole." "Can't you get down?" Dorothy asked. "Not really," said the scarecrow, "unless you help me." Dorothy jumped off the fence, ran up to the scarecrow, lifted him off the pole, and put him on the ground. "Thank you very much," said the scarecrow, stretching his stuffed arms and legs. Dorothy found that he could not only speak, but he could walk too. He followed her back to the fence and then asked, "Who are you, and where are you going?" Dorothy told him all about her adventures so far, and about her journey to the Emerald City, and how she would ask Oz to send her back home to Kansas. "And who is Oz?" asked the Scarecrow. "Don't you know?" asked Dorothy in surprise. "No, I don't know. I know nothing. You see, I am stuffed and have no brains at all," he answered sadly. "Do you think," he added after a short pause, "if I go to the Emerald City with you, that Oz would give me some brains?" "I don't know," answered Dorothy. "But come with me anyway. Even if Oz doesn't give you any brains, you won't be worse off than you are now, and it's always worth trying." "That's true," said the Scarecrow. "You see, I don't mind being stuffed in my arms and legs, because at least I cannot get hurt. But if I always have straw in my head instead of brains, how shall I ever know anything?" "Let's go then," said Dorothy, and the three of them started along the yellow road. Towards the evening, after a few hours' walk, they came to a great forest, and it was completely dark when they finally decided to stop for the night. The Scarecrow, who could see in the dark as well as during the day, saw a small house on one side of the road, and Dorothy thought she could sleep there. There was nobody in the house, so they made themselves at home. Soon Dorothy was fast asleep, while the Scarecrow decided to keep watch, as he didn't need to sleep. When Dorothy woke up the next morning, she saw that the Scarecrow was still standing in the corner and waiting for her to wake up. "Listen," he said. And then came a strange noise from among the trees, as if someone was trying to say something. "What was that?" asked Dorothy. "Let's go and see." They went in the direction of the noise, and soon saw something shining among the trees. They ran there and found a half-cut-down tree with a man standing next to it. It wasn't an ordinary man, though. His whole body, arms and legs, were made of tin, and he stood there without moving, holding an axe in both hands. "Were you trying to say something?" asked Dorothy. "I was," answered the Tin Man with great difficulty. "What can we do for you?" asked the girl. "Get an oil can from the house and oil my neck, arms and legs," said the Tin Woodman. "They are rusted so badly that I cannot move them at all." Dorothy ran to the house and soon came back with the oil can. With the help of the Scarecrow, she managed to oil his arms, legs, and neck, so that he soon felt as good as new and could easily walk about and talk. In the meantime, they told him about their adventures and how they were going to see the Great Oz and ask him to send Dorothy back home and give the Scarecrow some brains. "I see," said the Woodman when they had finished. "But after all, brains are not the best things in the world. I myself once had brains and a heart, and having tried both of them, I would much prefer to have a heart." "And why is that?" asked the Scarecrow, greatly intrigued. "Oh," sighed the Tin Woodman sadly, "I have not always been made of tin. I was born a man. When I was young, I fell in love with a pretty Munchkin girl, and we were going to be married. But the Wicked Witch of the East didn't like it. She put a spell on my axe, and one day, as I was cutting a tree, the axe slipped and cut off my left leg. I couldn't be a woodman with one leg, so I went to the smith and asked him to make a new leg out of tin. He did, and my new leg worked very well. But the next day, my axe slipped again, and I lost my right leg. So I went to the smith again, and he made another leg out of tin for me. And within the next 2 days, I had 2 more accidents, and the smith had to make a new pair of arms and hands for me. The next day, when the axe cut off my head, I thought it would be the end of me. But luckily the smith was just passing by my house when it happened, and he carried me to his house and made a new tin head for me as fast as he could. And the next day, the smith had to help me for the last time. The axe slipped again and cut my chest in 2. He made a new body for me, but he couldn't make a heart. It worked very well, but with my heart gone, I lost all my love for the Munchkin girl. I forgot about her and did nothing but cut trees until one day I got caught in the rain. Before I could do anything, I rusted so much that I couldn't move. I was standing like that for a year before you came and rescued me, so I had lots of time to think. It was then that I decided that I was much happier with a heart than without it. Perhaps I should go with you to the Emerald City and ask for one, the Tin Woodman finished with a sigh. Yes, let's go together, said Dorothy. Chapter 3. The Cowardly Lion and the Queen of Mice. The four companions set off as soon as they could, but walking along the yellow path in the forest was getting less and less pleasant. It was dark and scary, and to make matters worse, from time to time they could hear a loud animal growling from among the trees. Is this forest never going to end? Cried Dorothy after hours of walking in the dark. And just as soon as she said that, they heard a really loud roar from behind the trees. The next moment, an enormous lion jumped onto the road in front of them. Little Toto ran barking towards the great beast, and if Dorothy had not followed him and slapped the lion's nose as hard as she could, the beast would have bitten the little dog. You should be ashamed of yourself, the little girl shouted at the lion. Such a big beast like you, and to bite a poor little dog. You're such a coward. I know it, said the lion, sitting down with a sigh. I've always known it. 2 big tears appeared in his enormous eyes and started to fall down his nose. Even this tiny animal of yours, he added, pointing at Toto with his tail, is much braver than me. But that can't be right, said the Scarecrow, looking carefully at the lion. The king of animals can't be a coward. I know, said the lion sadly. That's my greatest problem. Whenever there's any danger, my heart begins to beat so fast. At least it proves you have a heart, interrupted the Tin Woodman encouragingly, as he was beginning to feel sorry for the lion. I haven't got one, and I'm not happy about it at all. Perhaps if I didn't have a heart, I would be braver, said the lion thoughtfully. And have you got any brains? Asked the Scarecrow. I think so, answered the lion. Why? I haven't got any now, said the Scarecrow. But we're going to the Emerald City to see the Great Oz, and I'm going to ask him to give me some. And I'm going to ask him for a heart, added the Tin Woodman. And I'm going to ask him to send Toto and me back home to Kansas, said Dorothy. Then they all told the lion about their adventures so far, and when they had finished, the lion thought for a while. Do you think the Great Oz could give me some courage? He asked at last. As easily as he could give me some brains, said the Scarecrow. Or me a heart, added the Tin Woodman. Then, if you don't mind, asked the Cowardly Lion, I'll go with you and ask him for courage. You're very welcome, said Dorothy, who by this time was not angry with him at all. Fortunately, the dangerous forest ended soon after that, and the 5 companions sighed with relief when they saw green fields with flowers again. The further they walked, the more flowers there were on both sides of the yellow road. All the flowers were red poppies and gave out a strong, sweet smell. The smell was so strong that after some time, Dorothy got a headache and started to feel more and more sleepy. The same happened to Toto and the lion. Soon the 3 of them could hardly walk. It's these flowers, said the Scarecrow, looking carefully at his companions. They make you sleepy. They do nothing for me or the Tin Woodman, because we are not made of flesh. We've got to get out of here as fast as we can. Otherwise you'll all fall asleep, and we'll never wake you up again. As soon as he said that, Dorothy fell onto the ground and fell fast asleep. They tried to wake her up, but they couldn't. The Scarecrow turned to the Cowardly Lion and shouted, Run as fast as you can to the end of this field. We can carry Dorothy and Toto, but if you fall asleep, we'll have to leave you here to sleep forever, because you're too heavy for us to lift. The lion nodded, and though terribly tired, he ran as fast as he could, and soon disappeared out of sight. The Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow lifted Dorothy and Toto up, and went slowly on. After several hours, they reached the end of the poppy field, and put Dorothy down on the green grass so that the fresh wind could wake her up. On their way, they had seen the Cowardly Lion lying among the poppies fast asleep. They tried to pull him out of the field, but the great beast was much too heavy for them, and after an hour's struggle, they had to give up and leave him among the poisonous flowers. Full of sadness, they sat down in silence next to the sleeping Dorothy. Neither of them liked the idea of leaving a friend behind like that. At that moment, the Tin Woodman saw a wild cat torturing a small animal in the grass. Even though he had no heart, he greatly disliked cruelty, especially towards small helpless animals. Without much thinking, he lifted his axe and cut the wild cat's head off. Then he saw a small gray mouse looking at him from the grass. "Thank you," it said. "You've just saved the queen of the field mice. How can I repay your kindness?" "You're very welcome, Your Majesty," said the Tin Woodman, "but I don't think there is anything—" But before he managed to finish, the Scarecrow jumped up and interrupted him. "Oh yes, there is one thing, Your Majesty," he said with a low bow. "If your mice could help us to pull our friend Lion out of the poppy field, we'd be most grateful to you." "A lion!" screamed the Queen of Mice. "But he'd eat us." "No, he wouldn't," said the Tin Woodman. "He's a great coward, and anyway, he wouldn't eat any of our friends." "Very well. I trust you," said the Queen of Mice after a moment of thought. "What shall I do then?" "Could you ask your mice to come here now, each one with a long piece of string," said the Scarecrow, who already had thought of a plan to rescue the lion. The next moment, the grass around began to move, and thousands of mice appeared from every side. The Scarecrow instructed the Tin Woodman that he should cut some trees and make a strong wooden platform on wheels. When that was done, the Scarecrow asked the mice to tie their pieces of string to the platform, and a few moments later he was directing the mice to pull the platform towards the sleeping lion. When they found their friend, the Scarecrow and the Woodman pushed him onto the platform with the greatest effort and ordered the mice to pull. Soon, to the two friends' great joy, the platform began to very slowly move out of the poppy field. About an hour later, the Cowardly Lion was safe on the green grass next to Dorothy. The field mice, so very tired, disappeared back to their homes. Their queen was the last to leave. "If you ever need us again," she said, "just call on us, and we'll come to help you."